Some pretty big breaking news coming out in about the past hour. Now, if you haven't already heard, take a look at the latest headlines with me. Coming out today, November 25th, Zelensky says that Ukraine is ready to advance a peace plan. It will discuss disputed points with Donald Trump. You can see this updated in the past hour. So you've probably seen across the headlines that Donald Trump, Ukraine, Russia, they have come to some sort of peace agreement. Well, take a look at the response that has already come out in the past hour as well. Russia warns that it may reject the U.S.-Ukraine peace plan if it fails to uphold Alaska summit understanding. And take a look at this also coming out. Russian TV host now threatens invasion of NATO capitals, sparking World War III fears, discussing directly Donald Trump's 28-point peace plan. So right now, it is looking like Russia is not on board with this peace plan that we're hearing Ukraine has finally agreed to. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Where do we go from here? Do you think that Russia is going to get on board and we're going to have some sort of peace agreement that is brokered right now? If you think so, put peace. If you think no, put war. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. But what we're hearing is that right now, take a look at this. Trump is going to be sending over an envoy to Russia in a push to finalize the Ukraine plan. We're hearing that Donald Trump is trying to get peace established. But at this time, we're hearing it's not looking so good. The response from Russia is not exactly what they were hoping for. So I'm going to get you caught up on the latest coming out in just the past hour today, November 25th, 2025, as we're hearing that there is a peace deal that is on the table, but whether both sides come together to agree upon it, well, that is yet to be seen. So we're going to dive into the latest video footage and articles. I'm going to get you caught up as to what is coming out here in the past hour. And if you appreciate that, do me a favor, take a quick second, hit that thumbs up, like button for me. Just help spread this further across the YouTube platform while we are on live. In addition to that, to stay up to date, it's totally free. Why not go ahead and hit that subscribe button? I'll keep you up to speed on everything, pretty much doing daily updates with all the stuff that is going on around the world right now. And as you know, I cite all the sources, try to hold myself to the highest level of accountability. So every article that I'm going to be referencing, it is going to be linked in the description below. You can click it, see it for yourself. I'm also going to put it on the screen, read right from it. You can see the dates, the sources. We're going to get into everything. And if you appreciate that, again, hit the like button, subscribe. And speaking of subscribing as well, if you haven't heard already, we're going to be launching that new YouTube channel here, the Holy Bible KJV, simply just going to be the Bible read by myself and my wife. If you'd like to join, we're going to be launching before the end of the year. The same voice that brings you the news will also bring you the Bible. If you are interested, I'll pin a link to that in the comments. But with that being said, let's go ahead and dive right in. Let's get to some of the details in the video footage so that way you can see exactly what is going on today. As we're hearing, there's a peace agreement on the table, but whether both sides will come to some sort of an agreement is yet to be seen. Let's go ahead and take a look.
For more on this, let's bring in retired U.S. Army Major General Dana Pittard. General Pittard, this peace plan that the Secretary says was authored by the United States sounds an awful lot like what Russia has been demanding.
Well, good afternoon, John. That's correct. A lot of the peace plan is very similar to what Russia has demanded over the last couple of years, giving up terrain. That not only has Russia won, but there's terrain that Russia hasn't won that they would like Ukraine to give up. The reduction of the Ukrainian military forces, and then Ukraine not being a part of NATO. That's all in this, and that's something that Russia's demanded for years.
So what's the motivation for Ukraine to accede to all of this? I mean, doesn't sound like there's a lot in it for them, except maybe, you know, Russia stops lobbing missiles at their apartment buildings.
Well, that's why this is really fascinating what Secretary of State Rubio said as far as most progress in 10 months. So something has changed a bit, and maybe it's peacekeeping troops on the ground. Maybe it's more security guarantees. Maybe it's not a large cap on or reduction of Ukrainian military. So we'll have to wait and see what that is. But either way, it looks like Ukraine's going to have to give up some terrain.
All right. Well, you're a military man. I mean, if Ukraine could stick it out for another 6 months, might things be better? The Russians have been losing soldiers left and right. They've lost ships, a submarine, thousands of tanks. Is this the time to end this war?
Well, it's a war of attrition, certainly, and the Russians have shown that they have more forces. They're willing to take more losses. They have less concern with public opinion. They're not a democratic nation like Ukraine. So I can't put myself in the shoes of President Zelensky. He's got to weigh whether or not his biggest supporter, the United States, will continue to support him. So he has got to at least try on this. But this agreement might stop the fighting, but it's not an agreement that will serve for long-term peace.
Yeah, the Russians have been upset ever since their puppet leader of Ukraine was forced out of office, and democracy took hold. You end up with Volodymyr Zelensky, enrolled as president. The Russians have been upset about that. They're trying to make a puppet regime out of Kyiv, aren't they? So, why give them what they want right now?
The U.S. really wants to have a deal, and Russia's really never fully recognized the sovereignty of Ukraine. So again, this might stop the fighting, but this is not the foundation of a long-lasting peace. The foundation of long-lasting peace is respecting the borders of Ukraine. It's pre-war borders, and it's also having security guarantees.
Let's turn our attention to the U.S. military buildup in the Caribbean.
So there you have it, you guys. So they said that this current situation is not a means for long-term peace. This is just temporary for the current situation. And they're saying that Ukraine is likely going to have to give up some territory. And what we're hearing is Ukraine is coming around to agreeing to this, but Russia is not. So we're going to see where we go from here. Now, let's take a look at some more video footage updates that have been coming out so you can see the latest.
Well, the deadline to try to get a peace deal is this week, according to the administration, but they are talking. The president going to Truth Social saying, is it really possible that big progress is being made in peace talks between Russia and Ukraine? Don't believe it until you see it, but something good may just be happening. God bless America. A joint statement on those peace talks Sunday. Both sides agreed the consultations were highly productive. The discussions showed meaningful progress toward aligning positions, identifying clear next steps. They reaffirmed that any future agreement must fully uphold Ukraine's sovereignty and deliver a sustainable and just peace. As a result of the discussions, the parties drafted an updated and refined peace framework. So what does that all mean? We'll start there with our panel, Fox News chief political analyst Britt Hume, Annie Linsky, White House reporter for the Wall Street Journal, and Fox News contributor Guy Benson. Britt, we've been down this road before, and it always seems like it comes back to Vladimir Putin, and it doesn't follow through. Is there enough pressure on Putin, do you think, to move the needle this time?
Well, I don't think there's anything about the first rough draft of this agreement that suggested that there's any pressure on him whatsoever. And certainly he has, as you point out, Brett, not really agreed to do much of anything yet. Now, there may be things happening in those talks, and we can certainly hope that there are, that would indicate that there's some flexibility on Russia's part. But so far, at least from what we've seen, and this has happened time and again, as you suggest, there has been very little of that. And obviously that was what you could hear that reflected in the words of President Zelensky. So I hope this works out, but I must say at this point I'm skeptical.
The vice president, Annie, pushing back on several members of the GOP who came out swinging, including Senator Mitch McConnell and others, that said that this original 28-point plan was really not the right thing. He said, what really fires up the Beltway GOP? The political class is really angry that the Trump administration may finally bring a 4-year conflict in Eastern Europe to a close. I'm not even talking about the substance of their views. Much of what these people have said about the Ukraine war has proven wrong, but whatever. We can agree to disagree. But the level of passion over this one issue when your own country has serious problems is bonkers. It disgusts me. Show some passion for your own country. I mean, that was a strong letter to follow there.
Yeah, the vice president, I think, was voicing the frustration that was felt within the White House and the West Wing over the weekend when there was reporting that the White House, strongly disagreed with. That came out saying that this plan that was put out by the White House was really just a Russian plan. Look, you know, when I was talking to my sources in the administration over the weekend and today, they made the point that when you step back for a minute, that Witkoff, the president's special envoy for Russia, along with Jared Kushner, his son-in-law, put their heads together and were thinking about what was the playbook that worked for them in the Middle East. What worked for them to bring those two warring parties together? And a key piece in their mind was putting out on paper some kind of framework, and a framework that would cause a discussion to move forward. So, I mean, that is some of the thinking that was going on behind the scenes over the weekend, and I think that's, you know, where that frustration came from the vice president, that to say that this effort was, you know, for it to be so criticized.
Yeah, Guy.
Well, if that initial draft that Britt was talking about was meant to be a trial balloon, it went over like a lead balloon on Capitol Hill, including among many Republicans, and we just heard that reference there with the vice president sort of punching back. Initially, there were conflicting reports that Secretary Rubio had briefed some senators and said, no, it's actually not really the draft. It's a bunch of Russian demands or requests, and we're going to work from there. Then the administration said that that's not true. So it's a little hazy to understand exactly what has happened. It does seem like whatever that first draft might have been, it's not where the administration intends to finish, which would be a sigh of relief for the Ukrainians and a lot of their supporters. But where things stand right now and whether or not Putin is feeling any additional pressure, very much unclear, although there does seem to be an uptick in appetite on the Hill for potential new sanctions, including some high-profile Republicans talking about that.
Meantime, back here at home, the two cases, the Comey and James, the teacher.
So there you have it, you guys. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I actually started a poll asking the question, do you think that this peace deal is going to work? Now, you heard them say that they wanted to get a framework out, just something to get the conversation going. And so if that was the goal, they have managed to achieve that. Right now, we're hearing that there are talks that are taking place. But the question is, are they going to be able to achieve peace from this proposal now that the conversations have started? We're going to take a look here in just a second at what just came out from Russia, as they're saying it's very likely they're going to reject this. Now, we will see. But let's take a look at some more footage that has just come out.
The U.S. and Ukraine are reportedly making significant progress on Trump's peace plan to end the war with Russia, with a possible Zelensky visit to Washington this week to finalize the details. Secretary of State Marco Rubio called the talks very substantial.
We had a very good day today. I think we made a tremendous amount of progress. We arrived here today with one goal, and the goal was to take, is 28 points or 26 points, depending on which version as it continued to evolve, and try to narrow the ones that were open items. And we have achieved that today in a very substantial way. Now, obviously, like any final agreement, they'll have to be agreed upon by the presidents, and there are a couple issues that we need to continue to work on.
Breaking down what this all means for the world stage is NATO General Secretary Mark Rutte. Mr. Secretary, great to see you. So the 28-point plan looked very pro-Russian.
Good to be back on the show, Brian.
Yeah, thank you. It looked very pro-Russian, and they look like they're coming back a little towards more of an equitable peace plan. What are you hearing?
Well, let me say that what I've seen over the last 10 months, that the President Trump and his team, so the Rubio and, of course, Hexat and Witkoff, they are all really working extremely hard to get this war solved. And it is good that there is a plan on the table, which was discussed, as you know, yesterday in Geneva. And it was a very successful meeting between Ukraine and the US side, and they will take it forward. The plan had to be worked through, and some elements had to be changed. But there was also good stuff in the plan. And I think this is exactly what's happening. And this is also to the president's instructions to make this happen, to end the meat grinder.
A couple of things that the Europeans aren't happy with either are the Ukrainians capping the size of their army at 600,000. Another thing would be giving up all of the Donbass. What they like is unfreezing the Russian funds and giving it to Ukraine. What they like is, being able to get security guarantees. But the security guarantees have to be real, because in '94 and 2014, they weren't. Do you believe that non-starter will be allowing international troops on Ukrainian soil? From the Ukrainian perspective, that is a security guarantee.
Well, you know, Brian, I don't want to go through that plan line by line, particularly because it is now under debate. As I said, many good elements in the plan, some elements which have to be improved. But more importantly is what we want to achieve here, what the president tries to achieve, what we all want to achieve is a durable and lasting peace in Ukraine, a sovereign nation, and the Russians never, ever willing to attack Ukraine again in the future. And these talks will now continue. There will also be discussions, of course, on some elements concerning EU and NATO, which will be separate to that discussed. So I think it was, all in all, was a very good outcome under Secretary Rubio's leadership yesterday.
Mr. Secretary, the key is those 28 terms were out there. The Russia had an envoy sign off on it. Is there any indication the Russians are flexible? Because they are not in Geneva right now.
Well, you know, it always takes two to tango, but it starts with a plan. And it starts with a president, President Trump, who wants to end this, as he did with Pakistan, India, as he has done so successfully in Gaza, as he has done with basically eliminating the nuclear capabilities of Iran, what he has done between Armenia and Azerbaijan. So this is a president really pushing peace worldwide. This is a difficult one. He said that. He said this would be one of the easier ones. No, it was not true. It is one of the more difficult ones. But I'm sure that we will get this done. And yesterday was an important step. And of course, there will be more steps following the coming days.
This is what experts say, like you, that it depends how weak the Russians actually are. We know they're grabbing troops out of Africa, begging them in Yemen, and we know they're losing 20,000 soldiers a month. They've already emptied their prisons. So what is your estimation on how much the Russians might need this to end?
Well, the Russians are indeed not in a good place. As you, I think, yourself said earlier on the show, the Russians have gained 1% of Ukrainian territory so far this year. So this is a few yards a day. We all know now the name of this famous city, Pokrovsk. They started 18 months ago to grab that city, and they still have not fully succeeded in doing so. And indeed, they're losing 20,000 men a month. And that means fathers, that means sons. Think of it, Brian, 20,000 a month. That is the same amount as the Soviet lost in 10 years in Afghanistan. They are now losing in 1 month in Ukraine, and then Putin having to increase now his taxes. And I know as a politician, you only do that if there is absolutely no alternative left. So him doing this, which is a very unpopular measure, means that they are not in a good place. But in the end, we cannot wait him out. We have to solve this. And this is exactly what the president tries to do. Gets this ended because it's important. We have to stop the killing.
Right. And you also, if we don't end this the right way, we'll just be postponing the next battle. If we end it the right way, we could put an end to Russian expansion once and for all. And you know that better than anyone. Mr. Secretary, thanks so much for sharing your views at the very critical time.
There you have it, you guys. Let me know your thoughts. Do you think this is going to be the end of this? If you think so, put yes. If you think no, put no. But we're hearing that they're trying to get some sort of an agreement right now. We're hearing there's been substantial progress in the Russia-Ukraine peace talks. However, the question is, are they actually going to have peace? And right now, we're hearing the warnings that Russia is saying very likely no. Now, I got one more clip I want to play for you guys. Then we're going to dive into the response that has come out in the past hour as Russia is starting to say it's not looking likely. It's possible, but it's not likely. Let's go ahead and play this video footage.
Let's turn to Madeline Rivera, who is live in Washington, D.C. with the very latest. And Maddie, Ukraine is the major emphasis this morning as we're learning there's been some positive developments with negotiations.
Yeah, a lot of. Good morning, Carly and Todd. Yeah, a lot of optimism on both sides here. Secretary of State Marco Rubio says the talks with Ukrainian officials in Geneva over the weekend was perhaps the most productive engagement they've ever had on the Ukraine war. He's not declaring victory just yet, but says they're further along than they were.
We arrived here today with one goal, and the goal was to take, what, is 28 points or 26 points, depending on which version as it continued to evolve, and try to narrow the ones that were open items. And we have achieved that today in a very substantial way.
Now, the way Rubio put it, this roughly 28-point plan began with a foundational document that the U.S. put together 3 weeks ago with input from Russia and Ukraine. That's important given the confusion that came out over the last 48 hours after a bipartisan group of lawmakers said this was not a U.S. proposal. Rubio did not get into what they discussed yesterday. Critics, though, have warned against giving in to Russian demands like handing the Kremlin Ukraine's territory in the eastern Donbass region and ruling out NATO membership for Ukraine. But even as the talks were going on, President Trump went on Truth Social to criticize Ukraine, saying, "I inherited a war that should have never happened, a war that is a loser for everyone, especially the millions of people that have so needlessly died. Ukraine leadership has expressed zero gratitude for our efforts, and Europe continues to buy oil from Russia." Rubio did go on later to say that the president was pleased with the talks. Ukrainian President Zelensky saying on X, "We appreciate so deeply that so many forces and leaders are working for peace right now. Ukraine is grateful to the United States, to every American heart, and personally to President Trump for the assistance that, starting with the javelins, has been saving Ukrainian lives." Rubio says they'd like to stick to a Thanksgiving deadline, but suggested that might change depending on the progress that they're making. The president said something similar last week to Brian Kilmeade. Carly and Todd.
Madeline Rivera live for us in Washington. Maddie, thank you. And NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte will join Fox and Friends later this morning to discuss the latest on these critical negotiations.
U.S. military leaders slated to visit Puerto Rico today to meet with troops and...
So there you have it, you guys. That is the latest on Russia, Ukraine. And you can see also we've got things going on with Venezuela. Now, the breaking news coming out is that we are hearing that, take a look here, Zelensky says that Ukraine is ready to advance this peace plan. They're going to be discussing and disputing the points with Donald Trump so that way they can get to some sort of a deal. You can see this updated just 1 hour ago. Let's take a look at this very quickly. Then we're going to look at the response that came out from Russia, and they said not looking likely that they're going to come to an agreement. Now, this article says President Volodymyr Zelensky said on Tuesday that Ukraine was ready to advance a U.S.-backed framework for ending the war with Russia and discuss disputed points with U.S. President Donald Trump in talks that he said should include European allies. U.S. and Ukrainian officials have been trying to narrow the gaps between them over Trump's plan to end Europe's deadliest and most devastating conflict since World War II. The Ukraine wary of being strong-armed into accepting a deal largely on Russian terms, including territorial concessions. Now, in a speech of what is known as the Coalition of the Willing Allies, a copy of which was seen by Reuters, Zelensky urged European leaders to hash out a framework for deploying a reassurance force to Ukraine and to keep backing Kiev for as long as Moscow showed no inclination to end its war. We firmly believe security decisions about Ukraine must include Ukraine. Security decisions about Europe must include Europe. Because when something is decided behind the back of a country or its people, there is always a high risk that it simply won't work, Zelensky said, according to speech text. That framework is on the table, and we're ready to move forward together with the USA, with the personal engagement of President Donald Trump. And if you appreciate Donald Trump pushing to try to bring peace, drop a 47 in the comments and hit that like button. U.S. to meet with Putin, Ukraine separately. Now, later on Tuesday, Trump said on social media that negotiations had left only a few remaining points of disagreement. He said that he had directed his special envoy, Steve Witkoff, to meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Moscow and his army secretary, Dan Driscoll, to meet at the same time with Ukrainian officials. Trump gave no details of the timings of these meetings. I look forward to hopefully meeting with President Zelensky and President Putin soon, but only when the deal to end this war is final or in its final stages, he added. A Ukrainian diplomat cautioned that territorial concessions remained a major sticking point, meaning a final deal was far from certain despite accords on various specific points. Now, these are really tough questions for us, the diplomat said. So they're vocalizing, hey, we still got some things to work out, even though we're hearing that they are saying that they are making progress. Now, underlying the high stakes for Ukraine, its capital Kiev was hit by a barrage of missiles and hundreds of drones overnight in a Russian attack that killed 7 people and again disrupted power and heating systems. Residents were sheltering underground, wearing winter jackets, some in tents. Zelensky may return to the United States. Trump said at a White House event earlier on Tuesday that he thought a deal on Ukraine was getting close, saying, "We're going to get there." Zelensky could visit the U.S. in the next few days to finalize a deal with Trump. Kiev's national security chief, Rustem Umerov, said earlier on Tuesday, though there was no immediate confirmation of such a trip from the United States side. Kiev's message hinted that an intense diplomatic push by the Trump administration could be yielding some fruit, but any optimism could be short-lived, as Russia stressed that it would not let any deal stray too far from its own maximum objectives. We're going to be taking a look at that in more detail here in just a second. U.S. and Ukrainian negotiators held talks on the latest U.S.-backed peace plan in Geneva on Sunday. Driscoll then met on Monday and Tuesday with Russian officials in Abu Dhabi, a spokesperson from Driscoll said. A Ukrainian official said Kiev supports the framework's essence, and some of the most sensitive issues remain as points from the discussion between presidents. Oil prices extended their declines after reports of Ukraine potentially agreeing to a war-ending deal. Now, U.S. policy towards the war has zigzagged in recent months. A hastily arranged summit between Trump and Putin in Alaska in August raised worries in Kiev and European capitals that the Trump administration might accept many Russian demands, though the meeting ultimately resulted in more U.S. pressure on Russia. The 28-point plan that emerged last week caught many in the United States government, Kiev, and Europe alike off guard and prompted fresh concerns that the Trump administration might be willing to push Ukraine to sign a peace deal heavily tilted towards Moscow. Now, the plan would require Kiev to yield territory beyond the almost 20% of Ukraine that Russia has captured since its February 2022 full-scale invasion, as well as accept curbs on its military and bar it from ever joining NATO, conditions Kiev has long rejected as tantamount to surrender. Now, the sudden push has cranked up the pressure on Ukraine and Zelensky, who is now at his most vulnerable since the start of the war after a corruption scandal saw 2 of his ministers dismissed, and as Russia makes battlefield gains. Zelensky could struggle to get Ukrainians to swallow a deal viewed as selling out their interests. Zelensky said on Monday the process of producing a final accord would be hard. Russia's unrelenting attacks on Ukraine have left many skeptical about how peace can be achieved soon. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said an amendment peace plan must reflect the spirit of the letter of an understanding reached between Putin and Trump at the Alaska summit. Now, if the spirit and letter of Anchorage is erased in terms of the key understanding we have established, then, of course, it will be a fundamentally different situation for Russia, Lavrov said. So there you have it. Russia saying they need to have the full essence of what it is that they originally asked for in Alaska. Otherwise, it is a no-go. And take a look here. You can see Russia warns it may reject U.S.-Ukraine peace plan if it fails to uphold Alaska summit understanding. Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov suggested that Moscow could reject the White House's latest Ukraine peace deal framework if it doesn't uphold the spirit and letter of the understanding reached at the August Alaska summit between President Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin. Lavrov said at a press conference on Tuesday that Russia is awaiting the updated version of the Trump administration's latest peace plan aimed at ending the nearly 4-year war. He warned that if the terms of the key understandings are extinguished, then the situation would become fundamentally different. Russia has maintained its maximalist demands in negotiations, insisting that Ukraine be barred from joining NATO and required to give up the rest of the Donbass as a part of the peace deal. So Russia is demanding that these requests be met. John Hardy, the deputy director of the Foundation for Defense and Democracy's Russia's program, told Fox News Digital that Moscow's intransigence over the past 10 months has been the main obstacle to Trump's diplomatic efforts. Now, the United States has really shot itself in the foot by kind of flip-flopping between strategies. 1 month, you're trying to pressure the Russians and saying that they are the obstacle in the peace, and then the next minute, you're trying to, force their terms on Kiev, said Hardy. What we really need is sustained military support for Ukraine and economic pressure on Russia. and Putin has to realize that neither the Ukrainian military nor Western, especially U.S. resolve, are going to falter. Now, former CIA station chief Dan Hoffman told the Brian Kilmeade show Tuesday that he remains skeptical about an end to the war, arguing the United States lacks the leverage to compel Moscow to halt its invasion. Wow. And there you have it, you guys. Let me know your thoughts. A lot of people skeptical about this coming to an end. Vladimir Putin, his strategic objective has always been to overthrow the democratically elected government of Ukraine. He'll engage in negotiations, but he does it to ensure that he's asserting the primacy of Russia in his self-designated sphere of influence, said Hoffman. I just don't see any evidence that Russia is going to pause in their relentless attacks on Ukraine. Wow. There you have it. Let me know your thoughts. Do you think that Russia is going to agree to peace, or do you think that no, they are just kind of dragging us along, just playing with us, and that there is just going to be war? Let me know in the comments. War or peace? Where do you think we go from here? And take a look at this coming out today as well. Russian TV host threatens invasion of NATO capitals, sparking World War III fears. One of Vladimir Putin's most vocal mouthpieces, Vladimir Solovyov, has issued a chilling warning to Europe in the wake of Donald Trump's 28-point peace plan. Take a look at this. Vladimir Solovyov, one of Vladimir Putin's most prominent propagandists, has delivered a stark warning to Europe about Russia's intentions to pursue and potentially escalate its military campaign in Ukraine following Donald Trump's 28-point peace plan proposal aimed at halting the conflict. So, man, let me know your thoughts. Do you think that Russia has no intention of peace whatsoever, and that this is actually the truth here, that they are just planning to push forward and threaten more NATO nations and try to take more of Europe? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. During his Russian state television program Sunday evening with Vladimir Solovyov, the broadcaster was accompanied by Alexei Kondratyev, a member of Russia's Federation Council, alongside other guests. Of course, it was amusing to watch the hysteria that started up. It's truly amusing, Solovyov said. Everyone started saying, what about us? They called the current plan an ultimatum of the Russians. Even their U.S. contacts say, no, this is a Russian plan. After that, Rubio came out and said, tisk, 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 while waving his finger. There is no need to incorrectly quote me. This is our plan. This isn't the plan of the Russians. I also like the plan they've lodged in response. It says, look, Russians, you give up the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. You give up the Kharkova Dam and the Kinburn Spit. I want to tell them, we can't hear you very well, he added. When we enter Paris, repeat it to this ear, pointing to his right ear. When we enter Berlin, say it into this ear, he pointed to his left ear, so we can hear your squealing better. Then he attempted to speak in broken Ukrainian. Have you lost your minds? I'm addressing you in your native tongue. What are you all about? Everything is being explained to you very clearly. So a lot of threats coming out here, you guys. Man, let me know your thoughts. This coming out from Solovyov. They're saying he is one of Vladimir Putin's mouthpieces. And do you think, the true message and thought of Russia? That they have no intention of having a peace deal, that these negotiations, they're just dragging the U.S. and Ukraine along. And here you said, when we take over Paris, in other words, going for France, when we take over Berlin, going for Germany, that there is a huge plan here. And it is, they're saying, warnings of World War III. Or do you think that they will get on board with some sort of peace agreement? Let me know your thoughts. Reading on, it says it's clear and concise. As our president noted after negotiations in Anchorage, where Putin met with Mr. Trump, the Ukrainian side put a stop to the entire process of negotiations. Europeans were the ones who contributed to this. The current peace plan presented by Washington should be discussed. Moscow is ready for this, reports The Express. He then delivered a stark warning directed not only to Ukraine, but the entire European continent. All supporters of the party of war should clearly understand that Russia is prepared to continue demonstrating and providing its superiority on the battlefield, not only over the Ukrainian Nazis, but over all of the European Nazi dirtbags that are present on the front lines, in one way or another, either as their intelligence units, their mercenaries, their equipment, or means of communication. All of you will stay and rot there. He went on to claim that Washington grasped this reality and is pressuring Volodymyr Zelensky to accept a 28-point plan, emphasizing that Mr. Trump reminded Ukraine's president that he has no trump cards to play. Russia's Federation Council member Alexei Kondratyev then proceeded to describe Russia as a totally special world, a nation that is neither the West nor the East. It is a Russian civilization. He then said that Malorosiev, meaning Little Russia or Lesser Russia, a historical term used to describe Ukraine, was a part of a Russian world and has spent the last 34 years trying to eradicate a sense of belonging to a Russia land in an attempt to give up the West. Wow. So there you have it, you guys. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, but not very peaceful words coming out from Russia at this time regarding this peace plan that we're hearing has come out today. And this just coming out in the past hour. Not looking good, but we're going to be seeing where we come from here. And we're hearing that right now, Donald Trump is going to be sending an envoy to Russia in a push to help finalize some sort of peace plan between Russia and Ukraine. U.S. President is going to be sending Steve Witkoff to meet with Vladimir Putin to iron out a few differences over the plan to end the Ukrainian war. And we saw that in that video footage as well. So let me know your thoughts. Where do you think we go from here? War or peace? Drop it in the comments, hit that like button, subscribe to stay up to date. I'll keep you up to speed on everything, regardless of whether we have war or peace. Whatever happens, I'll be sure to report it right here on the channel right away so you can know the latest breaking news. And all of this coming out today, November 25th, 2025. We'll see where we go from here. But that is the latest, you guys. Thank you so much for joining me. I'll catch you in the next one. And also, I'll pin in the comments for you the new channel for those of you that are interested in getting that Holy Bible, KJV, Steve Ram, Monica Ram. I think there's already over 1,000 subscribers. Thank you for the support. We're also going to be releasing a preview video very soon so you can hear some of the readings that we're doing. But that's the latest, you guys. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll catch you in the next one. Take care. God bless. This is Steve.